In this video, I will discuss the concept of making an absolute reference to a cell when creating a formula. So first I'm going to create a label in G4 that says increase, and in G5 I'm going to type in 0.1 for a 10% increase. So what I want to do is I want to create a multiplication problem that multiplies F6 by G5, and I want that information to be in cell G6. The reason the concept of creating an absolute reference is important is because I plan to copy this formula down into G7 and G8. And because I plan to copy this formula down, I want both of those cells to continue to reference cell G5. I need to make the reference to G5 a constant. So in Excel, the way to do that is you begin your formula. So I'm going to do equal this cell times this cell. And what I have to do is I have to make an absolute reference to G5. So I'm going to press the F4 key on my keyboard, which you'll notice placed a $ before the G and before the 5. That means that this particular cell has an absolute reference to it, so that if I were to copy this to any other cell in Microsoft Excel, it is going to reference that cell. You'll notice that F6 will remain relative, so as I copy that down, it will utilize the information to the left in column F. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that formula in. Take a moment and observe how the formula bar looks. And then I'm going to go to my autofill handle. You position your mouse in the lower right corner of the cell. You'll see a skinny little cross. And once you have that skinny little cross, you can click and drag down, which will copy the formula into the other cells. Now let's take a look. I'm going to double click on this cell right here, and you'll notice that it picked up the relative reference, which is cell F7, but it continued to pick up the information that's in cell G5 because I had made an absolute reference to it here in G6. Now I'm going to press escape. I'm going to go ahead and double click on G8, and you'll notice that it picked up the relative reference here in F8, and G5 remains my constant because there's that absolute reference that was made to it when this formula was created here in G6. So I'm going to go ahead and press escape to that. You might be asking yourself, well, I could have easily just typed F6 times 0.1 and then copied that down. And yes, that is true, but the reason that we reference the cell is so that if we ever come back to this cell, we can make a change to it and it will automatically update the contents of all the cells that are referencing that particular cell. So for example, in this cell, you could see that I have 10% of this number right here. Okay, this is 10% of this value. But maybe I want to know what my increase would be if it were 100% of this number in addition to the 10%. What I could do is come back up into cell G5, and I'm going to change that to be 1.1. And now you can see that if I were to increase my cells by 10%, my new total would be $23,217.70. And all of these cells updated the moment that I entered 1.1 instead of 0.1. Now this might not be necessary, but I'm going to show you what would have happened had I not made an absolute reference. So I deleted what was in there, and I'm going to click in cell G6, and I'm going to type equal, click this cell, times, click this cell, and I'm going to press enter. Now initially, this is correct. The problem occurs when I go to copy this formula down. So if I click on my autofill and I copy down, look what happened. You'll notice that this cell is looking here at the relative reference and here at the relative reference. So remember, when you create a formula in Excel, it looks at the reference relative of where the formula was created. So when I created this formula, it looked one to the left and one above. So it makes sense that if I copy down here, it looks one to the left and one above. So this formula is using the wrong information here. I do not want to utilize this cell. And then this formula, let's look at it, is using this information and this information. So basically, I need to make an absolute reference to this so that when I copy it down, these two cells will look up here and use the 1.1. So if you ever create a formula and you realize that you made a mistake because you didn't add the absolute reference, you can simply select the cell, go up into the formula bar, select the cell reference, and then add the absolute reference, which remember is the F4 key. And then you could autofill it down. So just a side note about the F4 key. If you're using a laptop, you may need to press the FN key and the F4 key at the same time. And if for some reason the F4 key isn't working for you at all, you could simply select the cell, go up into the formula bar, and manually enter a $sign where you need it. And that will make it absolute as well. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please click like and subscribe to my channel.